Sweet. So by the way, this is going to be on the new awesome onboard system, which is cool because we're going to have, it's going to be a forum and all this stuff. So it's going to be super cool. It's going to get rid of our Google Sheets. Yeah. Yeah, it's way better. I invested a lot. So the main takeaway here is how do we, one of the challenges is when we tell somebody something and they're like, wait, what am I supposed to do? That ever happened to you? I mean, it still happens to me from time to time. And so like, this is for me too as well. And so after this discussion, going through it, that's gonna happen far less. And the other thing is, have you ever had a situation where you coach somebody something and they got it, and then the next time they come in, you teach them again and they're like, wait, what? And you're like, we went over that last time, right? And so this is gonna help with that, okay? And so this is coaching cues. So it's internal versus external coaching cues. This is like, you know, the fight between the red and blue. And we're gonna figure out who wins out and why. Another key thing is we wanna learn to say the most with the least. And then we're gonna learn how to create mental genies and what the hell that means and why it's important. So there's two types of coaching cues. There's internal and external. And let me do the definitions here. So internal coaching cue, that kind of draws the attention to the body and the muscles. All right, I'll say that again. Internal coaching cues draws the attention to your body and muscles. And then external coaching cues, that draws attention to the environment around the body. External coaching cues draws attention to the environment around the body. Cool. And so who wins out and why? So here's some of the things that happens when we do internal cues. And that's an example, and we still do it from time to time. It should be basically 80-20, 80% external, 20% internal. So that can be like squeezing your glute, pushing the pressure of your foot to the outside of the foot, right? Pressing to the outside of the foot. What are some of the things that happens when you go internal? Your heart rate tends to go up. You get more in your head. Your HRV, which is a fancy way of saying your autonomic nervous system, meaning your fatigue goes up. Does that make sense? And then your cognitive load is higher. That means you're thinking, you're in your head. But what happens with external cues? Your HRV, which is, I won't go geeky science into it, but if it goes up, that's good. Your heart rate goes down. And what they also found is retention goes up and it transfers better. And the major thing is retention. Because this one, you got to think your way through, and this one, evolution takes over. And I'll explain that. Does that make sense? Yeah. Any question? Do you guys understand the difference between internal and external coaching cues? Yeah? Sweet. What's internal coaching cue? Okay, cool. What about external coaching cues, sir?
The environment surrounding the body.
Cool. And they basically did a massive, I think it was like Professor Wolf. She's like a giant in the field. And she was taking a motor learning course, and she was learning how to I think it's parasailing. And she's going through the kinesiology and the motor learning, and it's like, all right, externally rotate your hip, push through the ground, squeeze your glutes. And she's like, what the and she's a major in this, and she was like having trouble falling down. And at the end of it, she was like, what, just forcibly get up forcibly get up on the board and push nice and tall. She's like, why don't you just say that? You know what I mean? And so she did this massive meta-analysis, and meta-analysis is basically where you get a lot of studies all together, and it's like, all right, well, it's very conclusive, this is the answer, right? So across the board, external cueing is superior in each way. Look, they're less in their head, There's more transfer, and here's the most important thing. There's more retention because evolution takes over. I'll break it down, okay? And the key, I'm going to give you some examples here. So horizontal push, hip dominant, knee dominant, vertical pull, power grounding. Red is an internal cue. Black is external cue, okay? So horizontal push, we've all said this. All right, externally rotate your arms. Right? How many times have you said that and they're like, wait, what? Versus, all right, screw the jar covers on and off. I mean, we do this every day, right? And so here's an example. Who here speaks another language? We'll get credit for it. So here's the thing. If I have a book, like the word book in Russian is kniga. Multiple books is knigi. It's hard to remember that, but if I'm like, every time I say it to you, I hand you a book, you're like, oh, kniga, kniga. So how do we do this with coaching? It's external cues. Does that make sense? So that's a huge difference. Like, you've done this 1,000 times. And this is what I call creating mental genies. Like, there's a mental genie, like Will Smith, he's nice and blue, and you remember it. And you know when you've created a mental genie is when they tell you. They're like, oh, that makes sense to me now. Hip dominant, flexing at the waist. Wait, flexing hip at the waist. Wait, what's flexing? What's the difference? But do you know how to stick your butt out the window? It's creating a mental genie. You don't have to think about that. Another one you can use, pretend there's a rope around your waist and it's pulling you backwards. Okay? Knee dominant, lock your knees out. What do you mean? Versus push away from the ground. Vertical pull with your lats. Versus pull the bar towards the floor. Pull the bar towards the floor. Power grounding. Shift the weight of the body to the outside of the foot. Rip the floor apart underneath you. We all know how to do these things. And this is, look, this is external. And right away they have an evolutionary trigger there. Is it?
Common.
It's common. And I remember I took a workshop with Nick Winkleman. And the guy coaches, him and my mentor Boyle probably coach more NFL guys. He's the head of like rugby now in Ireland, I think. But he basically, in the NFL combine, even like with the 40-yard dash, like even like this much quicker, it's millions of dollars, your first round, so on and so forth. And what they did is they didn't change any like X's and O's. They didn't change, how much they looked at the program. You know what they changed? They changed one thing, how they communicated with them. And how do they start communicating with them? They started using external cues and analogies. And the other thing about analogies, it has to be specific to the generation, right? If you say to a young person like in their 20s, hey, the hay's not in the barn yet, they might know what the hell that means. But if you say to them, hey, you know what, it's not done downloading yet, you're like, oh, okay, I understand it. So they changed nothing. And by the way, all their times got way better. They changed nothing except communicating. So it's external cues. The other thing is saying the most with the least. Super important, because I think when you start off, you want to be able to like really explain it's too much. You want to be, when I give speeches, my slides are a picture and at the max one sentence. Maybe three, like literally one or two max sentences, that's it. Ideally, I have a word and one sentence versus the person who has it's so many things they give up. They're like, no, I'm good. Does that make sense? So say the most with the least. Any questions on this? I'm going to bring out something else too as well.
So kind of like speak, not dumb, but just like a common language. Because like coach language is like another language for them. It's another language for us too.
Yeah, so the last speech I did a few years ago at the college, I've uploaded it, and it's in our new onboard system, and it was broken up. It's 5 mistakes to avoid and 5 ways to stand apart. One of the mistakes to avoid is do not talk coach to people. What's 2 words that you know from your beer certification that you can throw on me that I have no idea about? I have no freaking clue what that is. Okay, so imagine like she's talking to me about beer and she says that, like off the bat, I'm like, it might make, doesn't make me, because, well, I mean, if you have a growth mindset, it's more interested, but even me, I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, and so when you say like certain things, when we say certain things to our members, it's like, say it in a plain language that they can understand, that makes them feel comfortable. You know what I mean? We had a client here who, they moved, but like he was on TV all the time, and they would call him up to, whenever there were SEM stills, he would be on TV and stuff. And I remember he was having trouble connecting with the audience sometimes. So his friend, who's actually, I think he might be in Chicago, you might know, like he has a TV show for food and restaurants. He's also a scientist. I'll figure out who it is. But his buddy said like, oh, just call it yucky. Like, you know what yucky means, right? It's like yuck. And then he started using plain language because he's so freaking smart that the audience were like, I don't get it. So the yucky. So how can you like, it's literally kindergarten stuff, make people feel smart, and you say the most with the least. Does that make sense? Don't speak coach. How would you communicate it to somebody in grade school? Albert Einstein, he said he was famous for being able to explain the theory of relativity to a 4th grader on a napkin. And he said simplicity is genius. And that's something I have to relearn all the time. Get simpler, get simpler. Any other questions on this? And then we're going to basically go do some hands-on. We'll use your notebooks to go through this. And over the next few weeks, I'm going to break down this internal external coaching because there's different levels to it, like the direction, the length, all these good stuff. But this is a great start. How can you make it so like, oh, everyone knows what it is, like the stand to push through the ground, what is it, the jars on and off. Somebody knows how to break something like this, so use plain language external cues. If somebody goes in their head like this, so what did I do this morning with somebody? Don't name the person. And here's the other thing. I'll break down in the next few weeks is the different types of focus and attention people have. There's short, medium, long term, and it changes. So you have to be able to read the situation, because sometimes people come in and their attention is just like very minimal. And so what did I do with somebody today? It was 7 people in here. What do? I coached it, and it was just too much for her.
Yeah, and you switched the whole exercise to something simpler.
Yeah, and even the first coaching cue I gave was super simple, but right off the bat, yeah, for sure. And look, this is why focus is so freaking important, because the look she gave me, I've downloaded 10,000 times. So I know it's not going to be a simple da-da-da-da-da. It's going to be like, oh, I need you to really get in here. And that's why it's so important to have that hyper focus, because I saw the look, I knew how much time I had, and then with 6 other people, I'm like, just do this.
Yeah.
That's why it's important to have strong focus. And then I said the most with the least. I literally just got down there, I was like, do this.
Yeah.
And then I said, all right, and then this. Good. And then that was it. So I said the most with the least. Yeah. Any other questions on this? What's an example like you guys can use when you're coaching somebody on a common exercise, an external cue?
Skier here, like some people have trouble doing one arm at a time, so I'm saying one always like you're punching the ground, one always going up. So like a swimmer lap, one is always pushing up, one's slamming down, like the ropes. You always want to punch the ground.
Okay, I think the one on the floor is good. The more specific the direction is better, right? There's a difference between going up versus touch the ceiling. And so I'll break that down in the coaching. And what they found, where they did this huge study, all these people. So for example, like a broad jump. You know what a broad jump is? It's like you know jump as far as you can over there, right? And they would, in the past, they would say, all right, I need you to hit this mark. You're here. Here's the start. Here's the end. You know what? When they started doing in this research, they would say, I want you to jump here, actually. It was beyond their current capacity. And you know what happens? They go beyond their previous current capacity, right? So it's not just high. Maybe it's go above your head. Maybe it's touch the ceiling.
Throw the ball to the wall, throw it
through the wall. Yeah, try to throw the ball through the wall. Does that make sense? So like we'll go over that. It's directional coaching too as well. It's the more specific, the better, and even going above and beyond, right? Does that make sense? Cool. Any?
When Tanya was doing wall push-ups to like get her elbows to twist and grip the wall, I told her to try to rip apart the wall.
Okay. How did it work with her?
Good.
Yeah.
She started to twist her elbows up and do it.
Cool. Anything with?
Squats on the box. I always try to tell them like, pretend you're sharing this box with a really annoying person that's like right behind you that wants to take up the entire box, and you want to edge them out with your ass.
Okay, cool. I like it. No, yeah.
Like push them back with your butt.
I like it. You see, like everyone knows how to do that. Like,
Yeah.
right? So they don't have to think about anything else, but that's like a great external cue. You know when it's working when they don't have to think and they just react. Because they probably did it 10 times this week, you know? Sweet, awesome. And again, over the next few weeks, it'll be, we'll talk about coaching communication. There's different levels of this, but you know, external communicate, and it doesn't mean you never use internal. It should just be like 80-20, you know what I mean? Make sense? Cool. We can end this, and then if you could save it for sure. So, yeah, boom, yeah, and then